Hi there. Today I'm going to talk about doing the blanket stitch on, well, for me, my Joy quilt that has been reimagined into being showers of blessing. And because I didn't want to do the same thing again. You know, you just hate to do exactly the same thing. So on the Joy quilt, there are directions in the pattern, which you can get on my website. There are directions about doing the blanket stitch around all of these, the letters, the bird, the flowers, everything. So I thought it might be helpful if I showed you how I do the blanket stitch. It's probably my favorite applique stitch, and I use it quite often. In the pattern, I think in the Joy quilt, it tells you to, I think, go ahead and put your batting and backing onto the quilt. But for this quilt, each quilt's a little different, you know. So for this Blessings quilt, I decided I think I have enough stability that I can do the basic blanket stitch. I'm not doing any heavy decorative stitches right now. So I don't need to have the batting and the backing on right now. If you'd like, when you do your quilt, if you feel like it's pulling too much, you can use a piece of interfacing or something like that. And it's fine to use the batting, but I thought I would just do it like I often do it. And when I do this, I wanted to show you some of the little shortcuts I take as I'm doing the blanket stitch, because once you get the hang of it, it's not too hard, and it can be your best friend as far as stitching goes. So let me show you first of all how I set up my sewing machine, and almost every single time I set it up in the same way, and I'll show you that. I'm going to start sewing. I've already sewn a couple of these raindrops, but I'm going to start sewing, I think, down here. All of the raindrops I plan to use white thread because it's kind of white, and the inside of the raindrops will be different colors, so I'll change threads for those parts. But here is how I always set up my machine using the blanket stitch. I have a Bernina. It looks like this. It's threaded. It's ready to set up to stitch. Right now, I'm still having trouble with my hand, so instead of being able to use my fingers, this is what I have to do. I have to take this pointer, and the stitch that I want for the blanket stitch is down in here. It's a quilting stitch, and it's 1329, so I'm going to punch that. And when I punch it, it's going to give me the width of the stitch and the length of the stitch. For this, I am doing a 2.5, so I'm going to add 1, 2, so it says 2.5. I'm going to touch there. It says 2.60. I want that to be down to 2.5. Then I also, before I start, I look up here. This is my bobbin tension, and it's 3.25. I know from past experiences that may be too much. So I always take it, or I'm almost always take this down, and I think I took it down the other day to 2.5. Then there's one more thing that I always do for the blanket stitch. My needle is I better talk about the needle first of all, or the throat plate. You always need to make sure that you have an open toe throat plate, because you're going to have a stitch that's going down and jumping over, jumping back. So you need that. You also need an open-toed foot that is going to allow their needle to move. And where my needle is positioned at the beginning of the stitch is very important. So I want my needle to be on the far right side. So I always, for my machine, I come over here and I punch this button, and it moves my needle over to the last or farthest right section on the machine. Right there, 0.5, and you can see down here it's very close to the to the foot. Okay, so I think that I am ready to go. When you do a blanket stitch, you can start wherever you like. I might start in the middle because I just want to show you sort of how it goes. I'm going to put this foot down, and I'm going to, this is another place where I sometimes have, putting the needle down and bringing it back up, and then I'm going to pull up the bobbin thread. And if I can, and this is usually so much easier, but my hands, my right hand especially, does not work quite as well as it should yet. So we're having to be patient with that. All right, so my stitch was ready to go. I'm going to go back up here and punch the button to make it start again. But I'm holding on to the 2 threads. And then I'm going to go and watch how the machine goes. It will go in, out, or into the inside, then it comes down 1 stitch, in, back. Down, in, back. You can go as slow as you need to go. And what I always look at is see where this needle is going. See where the edge of my foot is. The edge of my foot, the right edge is right. I follow this line. And if that line needs to be moved a little bit, I will move my fabric underneath. And we want to make that stitch as perpendicular to the edge as we can do it. So I'm getting a little space there. I'm going to turn it a little bit. It's okay to go slow. It's okay to stop if you need to. And you're just going to go right around. And I'm not going to go right around to the whole thing. I'm just going to go a little ways because I want to show you something else. When you get to the end, I think I'll just take this out right now. Well, yes, I'll take this out right now. And we're going to pretend like we're going to go all the way around up here and over to here. When we get to the starting place, my fingers are kind of big there. We're going to pull all of the stitches to the back, and we're going to tie them in a knot. And then we can clip the threads and nobody sees it. Now the little trick that I found before when I was doing this is, let me show you this, which one did I do? I think it was the butterfly. On the butterfly, you'll see that the butterfly in the middle is kind of, I could go almost all the way around and not have a problem. But when I tried to do the inside part, you start here and you come around here and then you come down here and oh, there's a big wing in the way. So what you can do is you can stop, take your threads, or stop, pull it out of the machine and start again over here. But another thing that you can do is when you get down to here, let's say, you can reset your machine. And let me show you what I do. If I'm working along on this blanket stitch and I come to a place that I want to just go around, I don't want to do the blanket stitch, I will go back up here, change it to a plain old number 1 straight stitch. Yeah, it's just a plain, but notice where the needle jumped. Well, in my picture, the needle jumped right to the middle again. I don't want that needle in the middle. I want the needle still in the far right position. And I also, if I think about it, I take down my tension a little bit on that too. There you go. So when I came to this butterfly wing, you can't probably see it, but I went and changed my stitch to a number 1 stitch, and then I could just go right around here and do a straight stitch it's going to be covered later when I do stitch down the butterfly. You're not going to see that straight stitch along there. You can see it on the back. See how that straight stitch went just right along there and then over to there. When I get to the place that I'm ready to start the blanket stitch again, all you have to do is come back over here, and on my machine I have to do this, and I have to go back to 1329, but the needle's in the right place, it's all ready to go. So every time you come to a place where you need to just do a straight stitch, you want to kind of go around something, you can go back over to number 1, and the needle's on the right side, everything is set up. As long as you don't turn your machine off, you're okay to do anywhere around here, and it's just a whole lot easier than trying to pull out threads each time and start again. So keep that in mind. Let's see if there's anything else that I need to tell you about. The main thing is for the blanket stitch, you always have to keep in mind, like on these, you need to set your machine up so that when you're doing the outside, like I was doing for the dog, when I'm doing the outside of this drop, I'm having the foot like that. When it's time to do the inside of the drop, I am going to have to move I'm going to have to move this thing all the way around. Nope, yeah. Because I'm going to have to start on this side. This is probably part of the reason why I did not put a bunch of batting in here, because it makes it a little harder to maneuver. Okay, but if I'm doing the blanket stitch here, I am starting down here because your stitch always goes to the top part. The background is always getting that straight stitch down. And let me go ahead and I'll show it. I'll show you the beginning of this here. Okay, so we're going to start right here. We're going to stick the needle down. We're going to pick it up, pull it out. All right, and then go back to the screen so I can get it started at the starting part. So I'm going to go right, it's going to go jump, down, but see how I can turn this just a little and keep this part of my needle right there. And sometimes it involves a lot of wiggling the stuff around, but take it slow, and when you get to a nice straight area, you might be able to go a little faster. And oh, one other thing, this is a single blanket stitch. My background is on the straight part. The raindrop is getting the jump stitch. On my sewing machine, this is a blanket stitch, a regular blanket stitch. The next one, 1330, looks exactly the same, but this one will do it double. So if you're doing something that you want a lot of definition, you really want to show it off, if you're using different threads or something, I will use the double blanket stitch. But for this, I'm just doing the single blanket stitch. So it's going to take me a minute, but I'm going to have to stitch all of these raindrops down, and then I'm going to have to come back and stitch the inside parts down with their appropriate thread. And then I will be ready to sandwich, well, maybe put a border on it and sandwich, and then I can quilt it. And I don't know what I'll do for that yet, but I think this is the main thing for the quilt. And if you're doing the Joy quilt, you've probably already taken care of the quilting, or you have everything just about done. So, I mean, you've taken care of the stitching, and then you can do the quilting, and you're done. So, hope that helps. Thanks.